I would like to integrate creative practice and arts more into the core of our farm. So it's not something kind of tangential and mutually beneficial, but it's actually at the center of how we orient towards our work. My name is Nikiko Masumoto. I'm really happy to be here. I identify as an agrarian artist. I've been trying out a new definition for what I do, and I've been thinking about my life as an organic farmer in terms of growing embodied aesthetic and cultural experience. So I grew up in the Central Valley of California, and as many rural kids often do, I dreamed of success and a bright future, and that was always defined as somewhere else, not in rural America. So I did go off to college, and it was there that I really had a series of transformational experiences where I realized my power and my path in life might be best served by going back home. So I did, and I have been farming full time with my dad. I'm the fourth generation to work on the Masumoto family farm. And in addition to that, I've been getting involved with arts organizations, serving on boards and as a volunteer, and also pursuing my creative practice, which right now I'm defining at the intersection of memory, place, and civic practice. I have a background in public speaking and a little bit of theater and storytelling, and I most often identify myself as a storyteller. So my dad, David Masumoto, he has been a tremendous influence on my life. From an early age, I grew up with him having a dual career as an organic farmer and then also as a writer. He's written, I think he's on his 9th book. And so I've been like amazed and inspired by his tenacity of work. It's pretty incredible. So at the same time as I grew up with this idea that art was not mutually exclusive at all with farming, that in fact, the two, art, creative writing as his genre of work, and farming could actually work hand in hand. I know that we have a slightly different, I think, orientation to how those things are integrated. My dad often tells a story that there was a critical moment early on in his career, in his, I think, early 30s, when he was deciding what to put on his business card. And he and my mom had this lengthy conversation of whether to put farmer first or writer first. And he decided to put farmer and writer, and to make sure that farming was his principal identity. And I think that has served him really well. And at the same time, for me, as I'm now back on the farm and working, I'm feeling now after 5 years that that kind of separation doesn't work, as it's not as fulfilling as for me. And I think maybe part of that is because a lot of my artwork and creative practice has to do with mediums involving people, involving live performance. So, but this really circles around to how we think about our business, how we think about what we're doing. So we're having really lengthy conversations right now about arts and creative work as wholly integrated, like as a holistic and not as something that's separate or apart. I think part of that actually might be in response to the challenge of sustainability economically for artists. And I hear some of us saying like, well, let's figure out a way of integrating this, of not having a day job and having our artwork be separate, but how can we kind of upend the system that already feels unsustainable? How can we remake that in different ways? This conversation is influenced by the tech world and the design world, where arts, creative practice, seems to be very integrated into innovation strategies, into the very nature of how people embody different roles within an organization. So that I think that there's an influence there into that conversation, where you have engineers and visual artists in the same room designing some new tech product. When I think about the possibility of a sustainable career as my life's work, both as an organic farmer and as an agrarian artist, and having those things dance together at the center of my kind of daily work. On a very literal level, one of the things that we're talking about on our farm is how to figure out how to have added revenue streams on the farm through the arts and culture work. Because we tend to volunteer our arts and culture work in various ways. And that's not sustainable itself, that the only way of expressing our creative desires is through some type of volunteerism. Now, volunteerism is extremely important, but it's not a sustainable model for us. So that's something we think about. I think another bigger conversation that we're having is how we might redefine farming itself, because farming as an industry, agriculture as an industry, has done a pretty good job of adopting business language that lends itself to have us think about food as commodities and as kind of a unit of economic transaction. And while that's definitely like part of the reality, like we can't ignore that, I think what the food movement has been tapping into in this particular moment in time is a totally different way of thinking about food, or maybe not a different, but a revival of a different way of thinking about food, which is thinking about food as a vessel of linking people to each other, of linking people to place. And I think fundamentally, thinking about bodies, nourishment, and pleasure. And so some of our thinking about how to make this work sustainable has to do with trying to disrupt and trying to pull the agricultural industry in a different direction, because I see tremendous power, both economically, but also probably more importantly, on a soul level. Like that's where the fulfilling work is located.